Welcome, ladies and gents. This is going to be no fluff tutorial where we give you all the stuff, none of the fluff. Today we're talking about orbit cameras, something super simple. We're going to get you in and out in 10 minutes so you can have a nice camera to rotate around your player and follow it as it moves around the world. I know we all like that. It's a pain in the butt, especially when you have to go through Cinemachine and go through all those extra hoops, so we're going to avoid those today. So first and foremost, to get started, of course, we're going to go ahead and create that C# script. Surprise, surprise, is going to be called, guess what? Orbit camera. Remember, we want to make sure our scripts are nicely named. Go ahead and open up that script. Awesome. Get rid of all the boilerplate code. Zoom in so people can actually see your code, right? And then we're going to talk about actually how to get this working. So get rid of all of this stuff. We don't need any of that. Cool. So once we've got all that boilerplate code out of the way, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce a couple of effectively public fields for the inspector so that we can tune our values. We're going to need a reference to the follow target, something that we're going to follow on the scene, move speed, offset distance, and offset height. I'll go ahead and do those now. Next thing we're going to need a transform for this camera's transform specifically. We're also going to give it a public accessor in case you need it from other scripts. Next up, we're gonna create a place where we can store our camera's current rotation so that we don't have to calculate that each frame. We're just gonna store those in two private float variables. So next up, we're gonna give these two private read-only strings. These are gonna be static. The reason we're doing this is just a slight performance optimization. We're going to use these specifically for capturing the input, but we don't want to pass in those strings every update. Next up, the start and awake function. In the awake function, all we're going to do is cache the transform, and then in the start function, it's going to be something a little bit optional. We're just going to make sure that we lock the cursor so that you don't see the mouse moving around the screen and you don't accidentally click on something outside of the game view. And again, this part is optional. Next up, we're actually going to implement that actual camera logic. So basically what we're going to say is when we get that input axis, that mouse X, and we move it left to right, we want to rotate the camera one direction. If we move it up and down, we want to move it another direction. I'm one of those crazy people who likes their camera inverted, so you may want to flip the Y in this case, but fair warning. We're going to do this in the late update function. If you've ever worked with camera code before, you know the camera code should be put in the late update. If not, right? If not, if you don't put it in the late update and you put it instead in the regular update, you get funky results that may not line up with exactly what you want. So doing this in the late update function. First off, we're going to cache the step, right? The step's just going to be the time.delta time times our move speed, right? Next up, we're going to get that input and multiply it by our step so that we know how much we want to rotate each frame. And again, if you one of those people who actually likes cameras not inverted, just do a minus equals there. I prefer plus equals. Yes, I'm a crazy person. It's okay. Next up, we need a couple methods to actually update the position and rotation of our camera. I'm going to stub those in and then we'll write those out. So first off, we update the rotation first, and then we update the position. Obviously, we haven't created those methods, so let's go ahead and do that now. Not there. Rotation. There we go. Next up, we're going to do some quick quaternion math. In this case, to combine quaternions, we multiply them together. We're going to calculate the x-axis first, then the y-axis, and then set that our current transform to that rotation. Boom. Now that we've got that rotation, now we get to update the position. This one's a little bit simpler. It is a single line of code, but it is possibly the longest line of code that we're going to write for this. Just doing a little bit of vector math here. We're going to take our follow target's position and add it to our rotation times the vector to that forward times our offset distance, and then add that to the up vector. I know that was a lot. Just follow along. Boom. And that is it. That is the entire thing. I'm going to zoom out just a tiny bit so we can see that. So we're taking the follow target's position, adding that to our rotation times our vector 3 forward times our the inverse of our offset distance. Basically what that does is it applies our forward direction in relation to our rotation so that the forward direction is always facing the player, and then we move it back in space by our offset distance. Then we add that to our offset vector, our height offset vector, by multiplying the vector 3 dot up. Seems complicated. It's not that bad. If you want to, you can also break this into several lines to make it a little bit easier. And that is it. The last thing to make this camera magic work, we're going to do this. We're going to add a little attribute here that says execute in edit mode. So what that's going to do is allow us to actually tune our camera before we ever have to hit play. So let's go ahead and jump back into Unity, let it recompile, drag our orbit camera onto our main camera. Going to take that main camera. We need a follow target. I'm just going to select this player. Boom. and immediately we see the results. So now we can tune the camera, maybe move a little bit further back in space, maybe move it down a little bit, and then save the scene. And when we hit play, we should have our orbit camera. Boom, there it is. We can now rotate around the player nice and smooth. If you want to increase that move speed, you can. But yeah, we are done. Again, if you like this one, please like and subscribe. Drop a comment on what you think I should do for my next one, and I'll see you in the next one.